Let me share with you a great secret. There are infinite states of consciousness, infinite worlds, infinite realities existing simultaneously in the imagination of God. And you, being God and expression, have access to all of these realities. The state in which you find yourself now is but one of countless states you could occupy. When I speak of parallel realities, I am not speaking theoretically. I am speaking of an absolute law that governs all of creation. The Bible tells us, "In my Father's house are many mansions." These mansions are not physical structures, but states of consciousness, each complete and imperfect in itself. Each state has its own world, its own experiences, its own relationships, its own circumstances. You are at this very moment stationed in a particular state, experiencing the world that corresponds to that state. If you don't like the world you see, then you must change the state from which you view it. You do this not by working on the world, but by working on yourself. Tonight, I will show you how to use your imaginative power to shift from your present state to the state of your desire. For when you learn to move in consciousness, the outer world must follow. For it is only the shadow of your inner activity. Consider what this means. If your desire exists as a reality now in a parallel state, then you don't need to create it. Your task is not to create, but to shift your consciousness to that state where your desire already exists. You need only to enter the state that contains the fulfillment of your desire. How then does one move from one state to another? By the use of your imagination, controlled and directed with purpose and love. For imagination is the bridge between the realities, the vehicle by which you travel from state to state. Let me ask you, what would it be like if your desire were already fulfilled? How would you feel? What would you see? What would you hear? What would you touch? If your desire were true this very moment, how would your inner conversations run? For your inner conversations are perpetually shaping your world. The first step in shifting to your desired reality is to clarify exactly what you want, not the means of achievement, but the end itself. Too many of you focus on the process, the how of achievement, when you should be focusing on the state of fulfillment. Remember, the means will unfold naturally when you have successfully shifted to the state where the end is accomplished. Now, having clarified your desire, you must construct a scene which, if experienced, would imply the fulfillment of your desire. This scene, properly constructed and experienced in your imagination, becomes the bridge between your present state and the state you wish to occupy. The scene must be one that is easily visualized. It should be natural, one that would follow the fulfillment of your desire. It should involve the use of as many senses as possible: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. The more senses you can incorporate, the more real your imagined scene becomes. For instance, if your desire is financial abundance, your scene might be a friend congratulating you on your new wealth, shaking your hands firmly, looking into your eyes with genuine pleasure. You would hear their voice, feel their touch, see the smile. You would experience the joy and relief of financial freedom. Having constructed your scene, you must then enter into it through the technique I call revision. Revision is not merely changing your thoughts about a situation. It is changing your perceptual experience of it. You revise by entering so completely into your imagined scene that it feels more real than your physical surroundings. You accomplish this by becoming physically still. Closing your eyes to the world of sense and then projecting yourself into your imagine, you must feel the reality of it, react to it emotionally as though it were actually happening here and now. This is not mere visualization or positive thinking as commonly understood. This is an actual entry into another state of consciousness. When properly done, you will feel a shift within yourself, a change in your feeling tone, a new sense of self. This feeling is your signal that the shift has occurred. Now, many will ask, how long must I remain in this state before my outer world conforms to it? The answer varies, for time is relative to the intensity of your desire and the completeness of your imaginative act. Some desires manifest instantly. Others take time to unfold in the world of sense. But remember this, the manifestation begins the moment you successfully shift your state. Seed is planted, and it cannot help but grow into its appointed hour. Your task is not to dig up the seed to see if it's growing, but to remain faithful to your new state, regardless of appearances. The maintenance of your new state is crucial. You must learn to dwell in it, to make it your home. This is where many falter, for they return too quickly to their former state, drawn back by the evidence of their senses and the opinions of others. To maintain your new state, you must discipline your thoughts and inner conversations. You must speak from the state of fulfillment, see from it, think from it, and feel from it. Your entire consciousness must be aligned with the reality of your desire fulfilled. Let me share with you a personal experience. Years ago in New York City, during the Depression, I desired to travel to Barbados to visit my family. I had no money and no means of getting there. But rather than focus on the lack, I constructed a scene of being in my family home in Barbados. Each night as I fell asleep, I would imagine lying in my bed in Barbados, hearing the familiar sounds of the island, feeling the tropical breeze, smelling the distinct fragrance of my childhood home. I would fall asleep in this state, feeling the reality of being in Barbados. Within a few weeks, unexpected series of events unfolded. A friend offered me a ticket, another provided spending money, and soon I found myself actually in Barbados, in the very room I had imagined. The outer world had rearranged itself to conform to my inner state. This is the law, and it never fails. But you must apply it with conviction and persist until your new state feels natural to you. For what feels natural to you defines your reality. Now let us delve deeper into the mechanics of this process. When I speak of parallel realities, I am speaking of something more profound than mere possibility. I am speaking of actual worlds, complete in themselves, awaiting your entrance. Think of it this way. God's infinite mind contains all possible states, all possible worlds. They exist now, complete and perfect. Your individual consciousness is like a tuner receiving the signals from the particular freat which is attuned. Change your attunement, and you change your world. This is not philosophy. This is practical metaphysics. This is the art of living deliberately, of choosing your reality rather than accepting one imposed upon you. This is the meaning behind the biblical injunction to choose this day whom we will serve. Many live their entire lives never realizing that they are choosing their reality in every moment by the state of consciousness they occupy. They believe themselves victims of circumstance, subject to the whims of an external world. But I tell you that all causation is from within out, never from without in. The outer world is simply a report, a shadow of your inner activity. Change your inner activity and the outer must follow. For the outer is only the inner projected. Let me give you a specific technique to practice. I call it living from the end. It is the art of assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled and living within that assumption as though it were already an accomplished fact. Begin by defining your desire clearly. Then ask yourself, how would I feel if this desire now fulfilled? Capture that feeling, that state of consciousness. Then throughout your day, recall this feeling and dwell in it as often as possible. When you wake in the morning before rising from your bed, enter this state. Feel the joy, the relief, the satisfaction of your desire fulfilled. Carry this feeling with you as you go about your day. Return to it whenever your attention is not required elsewhere. At night, as you fall asleep, once again, assume this feeling, for the feeling to only carry as you fall asleep is particularly potent in shaping your subconscious patterns, which in turn shape your outer world. This practice, maintained faithfully, will shift your entire consciousness to the state that corresponds to your desire fulfilled. And as your consciousness shifts, your experience must follow. Remember, though, that this is not a technique of escape from problems. It is a technique of transformation. You are not denying the facts of your present experience. You are transcending them by shifting to a state where different facts prevail. The Bible tells us, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." This transformation is what we are accomplishing through the disciplined use of imagination. We are literally renewing our minds, changing the content of our consciousness, and thereby changing our world. Now, some of you may be wondering about obstacles. You may be thinking, but what about the conditions of my life? What about the people who oppose me? What about my limitations? I say to you, there are no obstacles in consciousness. In your imagination, you are free from all limitations. And since imagination creates reality, when you change an imagination, the outer world must change to match it. If someone in your life seems to oppose your desire, you need not change them through persuasion or force. Change your concept of them in your imagination. See them as they would be if your desire were fulfilled. Hear them saying what they would say. See them doing what they would do if your desire were now a fact. This inner change in your attitude toward them will produce a corresponding change in their attitude toward you and your desire. For others can only reflect back to you your conception of them. The same applies to circumstances that seem to stand in your way. In your imagination, transcend them. See the end accomplished despite them. Feel the relief and satisfaction of having overcome them. This feeling state will find its way into expression, reorganizing your outer world to match your inner conviction. The world is infinitely responsive to your consciousness. It must be, for it is made of consciousness. The material world that seems so solid and unyielding is actually fluid and plastic to the touch. The touch is direct faith and persistence. Let me tell you of another personal experience that illustrates this principle. When I first came to America, I had a strong desire to share the truth I had discovered, but I had no platform, no audience, no means of reaching people. Rather than focus on these limitations, I began to imagine myself standing before large audiences sharing these truths. In my imagination, I could see the faces of those listening, feel the satisfaction of communicating effectively, hear the applause and words of appreciation afterward. I did this faithfully, night after night, falling asleep in the consciousness of being a successful speaker, reaching thousands with this message of truth. And though the outer circumstances showed no immediate change, I persisted in my imagination. Within a year, I found myself invited to speak to small groups, then larger ones. Opportunities unfolded in ways I could never have planned. People appeared who helped me establish lectures and classes. And eventually, exactly as I had imagined, I was standing before a large audience throughout America, sharing these very principles we discussed tonight. The outer world had reshaped itself to match my inner conviction, not because I manipulated external circumstances, but because I had shifted my state of consciousness. I had moved from one parallel reality, that of being unknown and without a platform, to another reality where I was doing exactly what I desired to do. This same principle applies to every area of your life, relationships, career, finances. There is no aspect of human experience that is not subject to this law. For the law is universal, and it is absolute, as within, so without, as above, so below. Now let's explore another dimension of this truth. Not only do parallel realities exist, but you are continuously moving between them, usually and consciously. Every change in your feeling state, every shift in your concept of self moves you from one reality to another. Most people do this haphazardly, drifting between states according to the circumstances they encounter and their reactions to those circumstances. But you can do it deliberately with purpose and direction. Consider your self-concept. The person you believe yourself to be determines the world you experience. If you believe yourself poor, you will experience a world that confirms this belief. If you believe yourself wealthy, you will experience a world that proves you right. The same applies to health, love, success, and every other aspect of life. Your concept of self is like a frequency to which your experience is attuned. Change the frequency, and you change the broadcast you receive. This is why it is written, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Your deep, persistent concept of self shakes your entire experience. And you can change this concept through the faithful use of your imagination. Every time you say, "I am," you are defining your reality. I am poor, I am sick, I am unlucky. These statements are not descriptions of facts. They are creative declarations that shape facts. Be careful then what you claim with the powerful words, "I am." Instead, regardless of appearances, dare to claim, "I am wealthy, I am healthy, I am fortunate." Not as affirmations to change your circumstances, but as acknowledgments of what is already true in the reality you wish to enter. For remember, you are not creating these states. They already exist. You are simply choosing which state to occupy. And you choose by your concept of self, by what you claim with "I am." The Bible tells the story of Jacob, who wrestled with an angel and would not let go until the angel blessed him. The angel asked, "What is your name?" And he replied, "Jacob," which means supplier or deceiver. But the angel said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel," which means Prince of God. This story illustrates the transformation of self-concept. Jacob had to let go of his old concept of self as a deceiver and accept a new concept as a Prince of God. And as his concept of self changed, his reality changed with it. You too must wrestle with your angel, your ideal self, until you receive the blessing of a new name, a new concept of self. You must persist until you no longer think of your desire as something to be attained, but as something already attained, already part of your identity. This brings us to another important principle, the role of feeling in the manifestation process. It is not enough to visualize or affirm your desire. You must feel it emotionally, experience it as real. Feeling is the secret, the key that unlocks the door to manifestation. For feeling is the language of the subconscious, and it is the subconscious that connects you to the reality you seek. When you genuinely feel wealthy, the feeling of wealth pervades your consciousness and communicates to your deeper mind that wealth is your reality. Your subconscious then aligns all decisions, perceptions, and actions with this feeling of wealth, bringing it into physical expression. The same applies to health, love, success, and all other desires. The feeling is the secret. Capture the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and you have found the key to manifestation. But not just any feeling will do. The feeling must be consistent with the state you wish to enter. If you desire wealth but continue to feel lack and limitation, you remain in the reality of poverty. Your feeling determines your frequency, and your frequency determines which parallel reality you experience. So in your imaginal work, focus on capturing the feeling tone of your desire fulfilled. What would it feel like to be, have, or do what you desire? Capture that feeling and dwell in it until it becomes your predominant emotional state. This brings us to another principle, the importance of persistence. Manifestation is not always instantaneous. Sometimes the bridge of incidents that leads to your desire requires time to unfold in the world of space and time. During this period, you must persist in your new state despite any contrary evidence from your senses. This is the meaning of faith. The evidence of things not seen. You must be faithful to your imaginable act, dwelling in the reality of your desire fulfilled, even when your senses deny it. Remember the story of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. The Israelites were commanded to march around the walls of Jericho for 7 days, and on the 7th day the walls fell. This story symbolizes the persistence required in consciousness before the outer walls of circumstance crumble. You too must march around the walls of your present limitations, faithful to your vision until those walls collapse and reveal the promised land of your desire. Many abandon their imaginal work too soon. They try it for a day or two, see no immediate results, and return to their former state. But manifestation follows cosmic law, not human impatience. The seed planted in consciousness needs time to germinate before it appears in the outer world. As Jesus said, first the blade, then the ear, then the full corn in the ear. There is an orderly process of manifestation that unfolds according to its own timing. Your task is to remain faithful to the end, to persist in your new state until it externalizes itself. This persistence requires discipline, for the mind tends to wander back to familiar patterns. You must train your attention to dwell on your desire fulfilled, to reject the evidence of your senses when it contradicts your vision. Each time your mind slips back to the old state, gently bring it back to the new. Each time doubt arises, counter it with the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Eventually, through persistence, the new state becomes your default reality, and manifestation follows naturally. There is another principle I wish to share with you tonight, one that is often overlooked in discussions of manifestation. That is the principle of detachment, or what I call divine indifference. After you have done your imaginal work, after you have shifted your state and captured the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you must release it. You must let go of anxiety, of constant checking to see if it's working, of obsessive focus on results. This detachment is not apathy or abandonment of your desire. Rather, it is supreme confidence that what is done in consciousness is done in reality and needs no further effort on your part. I think of a farmer who plants a seed. He does not dig it up every day to see if it's growing. He plants it, waters it, and then goes about his business, confident that the laws of nature will bring his harvest in due season. Similarly, you plant the seed of your desire in consciousness through your imaginal act. Then you water it with persistence in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. But then you must trust the process, going about your daily life with confidence that your harvest is assured. This divine indifference is the mark of true faith. It shows to truly believe in the reality of your imaginal act, so much so that you can release all anxiety about its manifestation. Jesus demonstrated this when he thanked God for having heard him before Lazarus emerged from the tomb. He did not thank God after seeing the results. He thanked him before, showing complete confidence that what was done in consciousness was already an accomplished fact. You too must develop this confidence, this divine indifference to results. Plant your seed, water it faithfully, and then release it to the perfect law that never fails. Now let us address some practical aspects of shifting realities. Many ask me, how often should I engage in this imaginal work? The answer depends on the individual and the desire. For some desires, a single intense imaginal act is sufficient. The state is entered so completely with such conviction that no repetition is necessary. The shift occurs in that moment and manifestation follows. For others, particularly those with deeply entrenched contrary beliefs, daily practice may be necessary. You may need to repeatedly enter your desired state until it becomes more familiar than your former state. The key is not frequency but depth. One deeply felt, completely real, imaginal experience is worth more than 100 shallow visualizations. It is better to enter your desired state deeply once a day than to attempt it superficially 10 times. Quality, not quantity, determines the effectiveness of your imaginal work. Seek depth of feeling, completeness of experience, rather than repetition or duration. Another question often asked is, can I work on multiple desires simultaneously? Yes, you can, but with caution. The mind divided against itself cannot stand. If your desires are compatible, existing harmoniously within the same state of consciousness, you can indeed pursue them together. But if they require different states, different concepts of self, it is better to focus on one at a time. Master the art of shifting to one reality before attempting to enter another. Remember, too, that some desires contain others within them. If you desire wealth for the freedom it will bring, focus on the feeling of freedom directly. If you desire a romantic partner for the love you would experience, focus on the feeling of being loved. Often the greater state contains the lesser within it. Now, what about desires that seem impossible? What about the healing of conditions deemed incurable? The achievement of goals considered beyond reach? The attainment of what the world calls miracles? I tell you that in consciousness there are no limitations. All states exist now, including states where the impossible is natural and normal. Your task is not to create what does not exist. It is to enter a state where what you desire already exists. Remember the words of Christ. With God all things are possible, and you are God in expression. For God becomes your consciousness, is God consciousness, limited only by your acceptance of limitation. So do not be dismayed by the seeming impossibility of your desire. In the reality you seek to enter, it is not only possible, it is already accomplished. Your task is to shift your consciousness to that reality, to enter the state where the impossible is already done. This is the true meaning of prayer. Prayer is not beseeching an external God for favors. It is claiming what is already yours in a parallel reality. It is shifting your consciousness to the shape where your desire is fulfilled and then giving thanks for its fulfillment. As Jesus taught, when you pray, believe that you have received and you shall receive. Note the tense. Believe that you have received. Past tense. Not that you will receive, but that you have already received. This is entering the state where your desire is already fulfilled. This understanding transforms prayer from supplication to recognition, from asking to accepting, from future hope to present reality. It is the prayer of thanksgiving for what is already accomplished in consciousness, though not yet visible to the senses. Now, as we approach the conclusion of our discussion, let me emphasize one final principle. The importance of living from your new state, not merely visiting it occasionally during meditation or visualization. Many make the mistake of treating their imaginal work as a separate activity from their daily life. They enter their desired state for a few minutes each day, then return to their former state for the remaining hours. This divided consciousness cannot produce the results you seek. You must learn to live from your new state, to make it your home, to speak and act and think from it throughout your day. This means watching your thoughts, your words, your reactions. When you catch yourself thinking from your old state, gently shift back to the new. When you find yourself speaking as the person you no longer wish to be, correct your speech to align with your new identity. In every moment, you have the opportunity to choose which reality you occupy. Choose consciously, choose in alignment with your desire, and remember that this choice is made not just in formal meditation, but in every thought, every word, every reaction throughout your day. The state from which you live determines the reality you experience. So live from the state of your desire fulfilled. Make it your dwelling place, your habitual consciousness, your default reality. Do this, and you will find yourself shifting into parallel reality where your desire is no longer a desire but an experience, no longer a future hope but a present fact. In closing, let me remind you of the words of Scripture. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. This transformation is what we have discussed tonight. The shift from one reality to another through the renewing, the changing of your mind. You are not bound to the reality you now experience. You are free to choose any reality you desire, for all realities exist now in the mind of God, which is your own wonderful human imagination. So choose wisely. Choose the reality that reflects your highest aspirations, your deepest desires, your true nature as a divine being having a human experience. Choose, and through the faithful use of your imagination, enter fully into the reality of your choice. Do this, and you will discover the truth of what I have shared with you tonight. Parallel realities exist, and you have the power to shift into the one that fulfills your heart's desire. Remember always, your imagination is God in action. Use it lovingly, use it wisely, use it faithfully, and all things are possible to you. For imagination creates reality, and the reality you experience is the outpicturing of the state you occupy in consciousness. May the God in you, which is your own wonderful human imagination, guide you into the reality of your fulfilled desire. And may you use this power with love, with wisdom, and with faith for the blessing of yourself and all mankind.